So first I want to provide an example. Cardell Jones was then a freshman quarterback at Ohio State University, big academic. He had tweeted here, as you can see, "Oh, why should we have to go to class if we came here to play football? We didn't come to play school. Classes are pointless." Now, ironically, in the same article that mentioned the tweet, Ohio State was credited for its success in its academic progress reports. The Cardell Jones example really is a prime example of a glaring problem that's going on in college athletics right now, which I identified as the following. Student athletes participating in revenue-generating sports, which are men's basketball and football, who are predominantly male African Americans, are exploited and treated unfairly on campus during both their collegiate careers and after college as well. And moreover, they are not informed on the importance of life skills, finance, and education overall for their futures in their post-playing days, despite the few that actually do graduate. Now, these male African Americans who participate in these sports are helping fund the NCAA, their individual institutions, and the many less publicized sports, while being treated essentially as indentured servants. So the link I have up there right now, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the ESPN 30 for 30 Broke. If you're not, take down that web address and that takes you directly to it. It's free, it's online on YouTube. Highly recommend checking it out. It really highlights the glaring problem that athletes have when they retire. A lot of these athletes who were very successful when they played, made millions upon millions of dollars, end up being broke. As you see those staggering statistics right there, 78% of retired NFL players are broke within 2 years. 60% of NBA players are broke within 5. It clearly is a glaring problem that needs to be addressed. So I've identified the problem already. I'm going to briefly discuss the history of how this problem came to be. Next, I'm going to review a handful of proposals that have been put forth to try to solve the problem at the federal and association levels. What's good about them, and what's holding them back from actually going forward. And then finally, I'm going to present my efficient plan. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it's what I found after my research that tries to bridge the gap between the problem and the best proposals. So first, the history. It really goes back to segregation, back in the 1920s. There were informal Jim Crow laws that were instituted at these institutions. These same institutions that, for a while, did not admit African Americans. And once they did, they were very limited in what they could do once they got on campus. For example, the University of Kansas, the same institution that admitted African Americans, barred them as soon as they stepped foot on campus from taking part in any extracurricular activities, and that includes athletics. An even better example is Rutgers University. In 1916, Paul Robeson, who was an All-American football player, was barred from playing a game against Washington and Lee College because Washington and Lee threatened, "We will not play the game if he is playing." And now there were no instances or risk of violence back in this time, and none that was documented at that time either. It can be inferred that it was really about money, because if Roberson had played, Rutgers would have lost potential revenue by playing one less game against Washington. So clearly there's a problem there. This leads to a domino effect, which is the lack of opportunities and education afforded to these student athletes at the collegiate level leads to the lack of opportunities in coaching and administration in their future. For all minorities, for example, in 2009, the demographics of head coaching positions is as follows: 89% white, 6% African American, less than 2% Latino, less than 1% Asian American, and less than 0.5% for Native Americans. And the numbers are just as staggering for administrative positions in athletics. Heavily in favor of the whites, as far as the minorities are much less regarded. And the reason why this is because of the quote good old boy system, which exists in a lot of major institutions. And it's heavily influenced by the boosters that are donating millions of dollars to these athletic programs to see them succeed. They don't care about the well-being of the athletes that are actually performing on the field or on the court. So let's go to proposals. Start with the federal level. First, litigation seeking compensation for intellectual property or IP infringement. How many of you are familiar with the O'Bannon versus NCAA? Okay, for those of you who aren't, that is the direct link as well if you need, if you'd like to see the complaint that was filed recently. But Ed O'Bannon was a star athlete at UCLA, star basketball player. And essentially, he is leading a team of plaintiffs who are all former athletes, seeking compensation for the use of their image, their name, and their likeness. Now, they have not only gone after the NCAA, but they have also gone after EA Sports, as well as the collegiate licensing company, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They're really trying to change the way the current athletics landscape is, the sense of amateurism. That these athletes shouldn't be paid, but they think because of this, all the money that is made off of them, without getting even their permission, is just really not proper and not correct. Now, sources, when they first filed the complaint, said that basketball and football athletes could get anywhere from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars just for coming from their images. And obviously that was good news for Mr. O'Bannon and his team of plaintiffs. However, the NCAA has a case precedent because a lot of prior related suits that have been filed before have gone in their favor. So what does that mean now? Here's an update on the case. The U.S. District Court Judge Claudia Wilkie has partially certified the class action. She's also, though, rejected the class action over possible damages from broadcasting video games. However, this doesn't bar individual concerns. So what does this all mean? It really means, while Mr. O'Bannon was looking towards helping the current athletes and the future athletes, he was also looking out for himself and the former athletes. Unfortunately, with Judge Wilkins' decision to partially certify the class, that means that he and the former athletes really lose out on their potential piece of the pie. So those athletes, if you check out the Broke documentary, who are in severe financial problems, really aren't going to be able to cash in here. However, it could change the future landscape of college athletics. Now, the trial is set to be scheduled this June of this year, although settlement talks have begun. Because if they don't reach a settlement, it's estimated that it won't get resolved until 2016. It's clearly 2 years from now. Now, the possible settlements have led towards licensing and endorsement deals with NCAA approved third parties. This could be something that would really change college athletics if that would be going forward. Also, going back to the electronic arts and collegiate licensing company, they did reach a settlement with Mr. O'Bannon's class, and they settled for $40 million. So that's something that bodes well for Mr. O'Bannon and doesn't bode well for the NCAA. The last point I'll make on this is that there's talks that the college players may form a trade association. What does that mean? That means that ESPN, Fox, CBS, all the big cable networks that are going to be broadcasting these games are going to have to ask the players and pay them for it. Clearly, litigation, for those of you who know or don't want to know, is very time-consuming and it's very expensive. So this is clearly, and it also is a case-by-case basis. So while this proposal is something that Mr. O'Bannon has clearly invested a lot of time and money into, it's not something that I would propose going forward. So let's go to proposal 2, albeit another litigation option, seeking compensation for unequal protection for racial discrimination. Now, especially in situations like this, there are burdens of proof that must be proven on both sides. Here, the African-American male that would be bringing the case must prove that racial discrimination or exploitation merits such compensation and equal protection. Whereas the government, or the association, or the individual institution that they're suing, or the defendant in this case, must pass the strict scrutiny test. And for those of you who are coming from law school, don't know, the strict scrutiny test means this. You must have a compelling purpose for the policy that you've instituted, and there must be narrowly tailored means to that purpose. What does that all mean? Here's an example. Pryor versus NCAA. Warren Spivey was an African-American male who had just signed his national letter of intent to go play football at the University of Connecticut. However, right after he signed that national letter of intent, the NCAA had adopted what was called Proposition 16, which raised the academic eligibility criteria significantly. This barred Spivey from receiving athletically related financial aid, barred from playing football, and this was all after he signed his national letter of intent. Spivey, under Title VI in Section 1981, was successful in proving that because he lost financial aid, he lost the ability to even receive an education almost, all because of the color of his skin. Let's go to the flip side. Jackson versus University of New Haven. Jackson was also an African-American. He was a Hall of Fame minor league football coach. And he, however, was passed over and not considered for a head coaching position at University of New Haven. And he tried to bring an action for disparate treatment, disparate impact, all under racial discrimination. However, he failed to meet the burden. Now, a lot of these tests which I didn't go into for the purpose of the time, have several elements that must be met. He, unfortunately, was not able to do so. It was a summary judgment for the University of Mayfield. So what do these cases highlight? They highlight two things. One, they're contrasting holdings, obviously, and everything is about usually, when it comes to cases like this, on a case-by-case basis, which, as I talked about in the last litigation proposal, sometimes can lead to unfavorable outcomes. Also, I talked a little bit earlier about the domino effect. African American students, because of their race, are often not afforded the opportunity to participate in certain things, or are not able to receive the proper education while they're at school. This leads to those students being able to, unfortunately, sometimes accumulate massive amounts of debt from student loans because they largely come from impoverished backgrounds and are forced to drop out of school if they cannot afford it, if they were to lose their scholarship. And those same students become adults without receiving proper full education, life skills, or financial knowledge to be able to be considered for leadership roles, particularly in athletics. So let's move to the association level. How many of you have heard of the cost of attendance stipend? Okay. It was really hot, and a lot of people knew that. I was in the news a lot about a year and a half ago. NCAA President Mark Emmert initially supported it. It was adding a $2,000 cost of attendance stipend to the full scholarship to make the scholarship really full. And I'll go into detail what that actually means, the cost of attendance, in a little bit. But now, it has kind of come to a halt because the probability of unequal Division I budgets. Now, economist Jim Peach refutes this point. From 1950 to 2005 in football, over 50% of top 8 finishes in the AP poll were played by just 12 schools. In other words, the NCAA currently doesn't have much competitive balance, and paying student athletes a stipend doesn't really change that reality. I also put up some money allocations here. The NCAA institutions are given this money to the NCAA over each year. And they're distributed through these various allocations. I bolded 3 in particular: academic enhancement, conference grants, and student assistance fund. I highlighted those for 2 reasons. One, those are 3 of the arguably most important ones because they are highlighting academic programs, academic support programs, gambling and drug education, being able to provide special assistance for funding for athletes who exhaust their eligibility if they sustain a career-ending injury, so they don't have to take out performance accumulate massive amounts of debt. I've also highlighted them because, as you can see, the 3 lowest allocations here. The basketball fund, which comes from the March Madness tournament, is given to athletic departments, and however, there's no determining factor of how they actually spend that money. It's usually going into facilities and things like that, which obviously are beneficial to the athletes. When it comes to the academics, being able to set them up for more success as opposed to failure, things like that, is clearly a problem. Next, let's move to proposal 4, the status quo, something that's often overlooked. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of these people are people who argue for amateurism, and these are collegiate athletes. They aren't professionals. They are student athletes. They are receiving a scholarship. They're already getting paid. Why should we have to do anything to change that? I like Dr. Ellen Swarovski's take on amateurism. She teaches at Drexel University. She says, quote, "What college sports did was take that amateur concept, which was so class-based, and broadened and democratized it. But they ultimately still made it favorable to the power elite people who are running colleges and universities. It's created a system of exploitation. Rules have been set up in such a way to avoid public understanding that athletes are already paid. It's just a matter of if they're paid their value." Going further, Ramogi Buma, who is also a college star athlete, who is now the founder and president of the National College Players Association, had his take on scholarships and the cost of attendance and if it's really covering everything that they need. He was forced to take toilet paper, toiletries from hotels when he would go to away games. He was accumulating excessive amounts of debt from various credit cards that he was taking because he didn't have the money to afford things like that during and after graduation. And according to a nutritionist at his college, he was not getting the recommended amount of meals in for the calories that he was burning when he was playing football. So it wasn't covering the full cost of attendance. So having student athletes on these full scholarships with the cost of attendance being covered to solve some of these small problems. Lastly, I want to talk about the Student Athlete Bill of Rights, which some of you who are here from California may be aware of. State Senator Alex Padilla is the one who authored this bill, and it requires California universities who generate an average of more than $10 million in media revenue to provide the following protections to student athletes. Now, the ones I want to highlight in particular are the coverage of healthcare premiums and deductibles and the financial and life skills workshops. So when it comes to healthcare premium and deductibles, that's specifically targeted for low-income student athletes, those who have exhausted their NCAA eligibility but have not yet received a degree, and those who have sustained career health injuries that have not been able to continue to participate. That's something that I think should be definitely instituted going forward in all universities. Also, the financial and life skills workshop. I'm going too further with my proposal, but this is something that a lot of these athletes clearly they come in, as you had alluded to, with these majors that are really kind of cupcake majors, or very liberal arts and generalized majors that don't have any particular focus that can help them with their futures after playing. So having a workshops for the student athletes in finance and life skills would definitely benefit from that. Now, Padilla's take on this says, quote, athletes on scholarship who suffer season or career-ending injuries are often saddled with medical bills and are at risk of losing their scholarship. This lack of support contributes to low graduation rates among student athletes. Neither personal injury nor poverty should dim the dreams of a student athlete pursuing a college degree, particularly when their performance has enriched their college. Now, I'm not naive, and neither are you. A lot of these big-time student athletes that are into particularly men's basketball and football aren't staying on 4 years. They come for a year, if it's in basketball, or 2 or 3 years in football, and as soon as they're eligible to go to the pros, they do. Because a lot of them, as I've talked about, come from poverty backgrounds, and they need that money quickly. What I'm talking about is the life skills and the financial advisement. Things like that need to be instituted for as long as they are on campus, whether it be 1 year or all 4 years, making sure that they're getting proper advisement and education while they are spending that time in college, getting the most out of that. Now, the one thing that's wrong with this plan, it's a very strong, sound plan, and a lot of points that I look to when I compose mine, was it's limited in its reach. Remember, it requires universities that generate an average of greater than $10 million in media revenue. That only looks at 4 schools in California: Stanford, USC, UCLA, and Cal Berkeley. Now, this is regardless of public or private status, because they're all chartered and they all receive types of scholarships. But obviously, the smaller schools in California have been complaining about this bill because it puts these schools at an unfair advantage. So they can offer something that the smaller schools can't as far as these types of protections. So let's go to my plan that I propose. So these male athletes who are predominantly African American and participating in these revenue generators should be given the following protections. First, guaranteed annual cost of attendance stipend. I'll go into more detail in a minute. Second, a guaranteed athletic, academic, or financial aid type of scholarship. And third, financial and life skills training through a sports-focused curriculum. So first, going to the cost of attendance stipend. I had a lot of questions raised when I first did my research on this by my peers about what about any Title IX issues, and equal protection issues. Because obviously, my focus is with the men's basketball and football players. In order to provide the benefits to the remaining student athletes, such as the water polo players, the softball players, the volleyball players, the NCAA institution should provide a cost of attendance stipend distributed equally to all the student athletes. However, it could be on a type of scale depending on the type of budget that each program has. Now, going back to the NCPA I discussed, they found a report. What was the cost of attendance? I talked about that a lot in this presentation. What exactly does that mean? It really includes a lot of different things. A lot of different things that we may take for granted. The average college student may take for granted that they can afford, but not a lot of the student athletes, such as parking fees, utilities charges, toiletry and medical expenses, clothing, such as renting or buying a suit for a job interview, an internship interview, emergency trips home, etc. Things like that that isn't covered by the current scholarship. A small amount of money could definitely help. Now, the report that I've cited here, they found that the cost of attendance not covered the range of anywhere from $950 to $6,000. So the NCAA bylaw that talks about the full grant aid, I feel should be amended. It should read, quote, a full grant aid financial aid that consists of tuition and fees, room and board, required course-related books, and there's my addendum, and a stipend of at least $950 to meet the full cost of attendance. Let's go to the scholarship. Ensuring student-athletes' ability to stay in school and get an education is obviously very critical. That's why those who advocate both for amateur and not realize that these are still students. For their short time, maybe just a year while they're on campus. But having these scholarships guaranteed is very important. So there shouldn't be any worry if I sustain an injury, I'm going to lose my scholarship and I might have to drop out of school. Now, obviously that doesn't mean they can keep it no matter what. If there are poor grades, if there's academic misconduct or any criminal type of behavior, obviously they should be revoked. But making sure that they don't have any fear that if they sustain a type of injury or anything like that, they won't be able to stay in school. And now finally, I want to talk about training skills and finance and life skills. I've talked about them a lot in this presentation. I feel as if there needs to be a focus. A lot of these athletes, student athletes, not all, but a lot of them end up going into a career some form in athletics, in the sports industry, as I'm saying. And a sports-focused curriculum with the following courses would definitely help. You had mentioned some courses, cupcake courses, as they're often referred to. I think the following types of courses would really benefit student athletes while they're on campus: finance, accounting, financial planning, banking, investments, presentational speaking, public advocacy, interviewing skills, sports psychology, nutrition, and this goes on. But those are just a few classes that not only do I think would benefit the student athletes, but I think that they would be interested in as well. Now I have up here the Ohio State University model and Marquette University model. I've talked about Ohio State at the very beginning and not in the best of lights. And as many of you know, they have been in some deep water over the past couple of years with some NCAA violations and sanctions and things of that nature. But one thing that they did that I thought was particularly good and didn't get a lot of press was those same boosters and donors that are part of the good old boy system that have contributed to the problem for the lack of opportunities for coaches and administrators. They used $1.1 million from those boosters to fund a stricter compliance and financial plan. So the coaches and the football team are helping the student athletes open checking accounts. They're helping them with their personal budgets, monitoring them. So they're monitoring their spending habits. They've increased, gone into education on making sure you don't get into financial trouble with gambling or drugs or alcohol. So these coaches are being held accountable, and they're given additional duties to go along with their increasing salaries over the past 7 years. And lastly, the Marquette University model. Marquette, often regarded as a very, very good academic institution as well as athletics. They require all athletes, not just basketball, all athletes, to attend mandatory summer school even before they begin their freshman years. The purpose of this is to allow for athletic academic advisors to assess if a player has a specific need or needs a specific tutor or an academic program for their future courses. So they're set up to succeed as opposed to going in, falling behind, and getting bottled down and possibly developing some mental health issues. At the end of the day, there needs to be a level of accountability at these individual institutions, as well as the NCAA, that derive the great financial benefits from the student athletes. So helping the student athletes succeed as opposed to fail will inevitably create an equitable playing field. Thank you, everyone who's come here to listen, and all the people who are listening on the live stream. If you have any questions about sources that I've cited or any questions you may have, all my contact information is here. Thank you, everyone.
Jonathan, great presentation. This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart, and I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure if you're aware, because I just became aware of this by someone who texted me, but Mary Willingham from UNC has now joined the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit to sort of refute the idea that student athletes are actually receiving an education in exchange for their scholarship. So, like I said, this is something that just someone just sent me. But any thoughts on that, or given the turn that's unfolded in the O'Bannon lawsuit, what might help? Because right now, I know, at least I feel as if it's not going to happen anytime soon.
It's interesting you bring up North Carolina because I had just heard last week during the broadcast I went to Syracuse, the broadcast of the Syracuse North Carolina basketball game. A lot of the basketball players were in some deep water, and the entire athletic program was being investigated by the NCAA because apparently the basketball team was getting their scores altered, and they were not being read. They couldn't read at they were I guess reporting that they were read at a 5th grade level as opposed to these scores that they were admitting were obviously above 5th grade level. So it's interesting that she joined the lawsuit to go against it. I think we all can agree that the college landscape is changing. I personally don't advocate litigation. As I said, it's time consuming and it costs a lot of money. Sometimes it gets the attention of the people who are in charge, clearly, because it's been in the news. The All Players United, I believe I read they had a banner fly across the national championship between Florida State and Auburn football. So clearly the awareness is being raised. I don't think I agree with you, Dr. Bill. I don't think it's something that's going to change tomorrow, but I do think that college athletics, as far as protections and expectations, are definitely going to change for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, John.